Recording in progress.
I don't see Stacy Rizzo. I'm going to note her as absent. Susan Gravelisi,
Here.
Dr. Kelly,
Here.
Carl Svensson,
Here.
Christopher Bowen,
Here.
Miss Joanne McKenna,
Here.
Rich Viscay,
Here.
Don Cermella, I don't see. Note him as absent. Nick Rystrom,
Here.
Jerry Visconti,
Here.
Mayor Patrick Keefe. I don't see him. Note him as absent, and I'm going to go back and note that Stacy Rizzo just joined us. Stacy, do you want to say hi for the record?
I'm here. Lucky you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. I think we're going to start off with some housekeeping items for today. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if we, first item on our agenda is to approve meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was May 17th. And then also we have an outstanding meeting minutes from our February 16th meeting that did not formally get approved at the previous meetings. So we're looking for a motion to, let's start with February 16th, motion to approve February 16th meeting minutes.
Motion to approve February 16th meeting minutes. Second.
Second.
Thank you. And I guess we'll do a separate roll call for each. So we'll start with Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Susan Gravelisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Christopher Bowen,
Yes.
Joanne McKenna,
Yes.
Rich Viscay,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
Jerry Visconti.
Yes.
Perfect. Next, we
Just
will have-
as a matter of protocol, I don't know if Joanne can vote on those minutes because she wouldn't have been at that meeting.
Right. Right.
We could list Joanne as an abstain, if that's okay,
Yeah.
Joanne.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
Right. So that was the February 16th. Next, we have the May 17th meetings minutes, which were our last meeting.
Motion to approve. Second.
Thank you. And roll call for these meeting minutes, starting with Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Susan Gravelisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Christopher Bowen,
Yes.
Joanne McKenna. I'm going to note same thing, abstain. Since I know
Yes.
you weren't at last week's meeting or last month's meeting. Rich Viscay,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
and Jerry Visconti.
Yes.
Beautiful. All right, next on our agenda is the budget update and vote to approve May invoices. So I'm going to pull up the latest budget that we have, which is now incorporating the additional feasibility study. And so actual spent to date is now $2,318,650, which is technically 53.9% of the total budget of the two study funds.
And Linda, before you jump off this page, I'm just gonna bookmark this for a future agenda item tonight. Could you just run your mouse over the uncommitted columns there, over on the right? Those uncommitted values, are what we're referring to as the contingency. That's money that's uncommitted, it's contingency, and we're actually gonna be asking the committee to dip into that a little bit later. So just as you're looking at this budget, the right column uncommitted, if you wanna know what's left, that's not already in
Okay.
someone's contract and going to be expended, you can use that column as the
Okay.
contingency value.
And actually, just before you go on, I know the committee members received copies of all of this paperwork, but I'm wondering if for the folks who are joining the meeting as non-committee members, if this could be enlarged so that we could actually see it on my screen. I don't know if it's my screen, but it looks, I can't even see any of the numbers that are on there. I don't know if it needs to go into presentation mode or something.
This software that Linda's in doesn't have presentation mode. That's probably about as big as she's gonna be able to get it, but we can,
Pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's better. I can at least see the numbers now, but, okay. Maybe
it-
for
it's-
future meetings, we could have it in more of a presentation mode that would take up the screen.
Yep, we can run it from a slide.
Okay,
I think this is the largest I can get it.
that works, I think.
That's better.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So as we're, the actual spent to date that we have in this column also now includes the invoices for May, which I'm going to switch over to this screen and see if. So these are the invoices that were sent out for feasibility study, which is, I believe we still have to do these separate, if I'm correct.
Correct.
So our first motion will be to approve left field's invoice number 28 for May services in the amount of $21,000.
So
Motion.
moved.
Second,
Second.
I will do a roll call for these, starting with Stacy Rizzo,
yes.
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Christopher Bowen,
Yes.
Joanne McKenna,
Yes.
Rich Viscay,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
and Jerry Visconti.
Yes.
Perfect. Next, we have Perkins Eastman's invoice for May services. This is their 27th invoice in the process, and this is in the amount of $133,399.60.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And roll call, Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Christopher Bowen,
Yes.
Joanne McKenna,
Yes.
Rich Viscay,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
thank you, and Jerry Visconti.
Yes.
Perfect. Going back to our agenda, I'm going to stop sharing and kick it over to Brian.
Yeah, and Linda, if you could co-host me and Dawn, we're gonna be handing it back and forth a little bit as we go through. I'm gonna cover the boring stuff. Dawn's gonna cover the exciting stuff as usual.
You get all the
Um,
text slides.
Yeah, you can tell the ones the OPM does. So just gonna rifle through what we already covered from the handout. What we have tonight is actually a contract amendment for Perkins Eastman. And the long story short on this is a few of the budget values captured as allowances in the bigger contract that was approved back in April. As we're getting into the details with some of Perkins Eastman sub-consultants, some of these values were inadequate. Dan, do you mind just giving these three items a quick, just a quick summary, and then I'll run through the numbers and we'll stop for questions?
Sure. From a survey perspective, we had anticipated surveying the site up to the edge of the Rumney Marsh, back to School Street, and over to the southern edge of the site, which is basically where I think we all know where the building may end up in the design. The existing building and the parking areas. What we didn't have included was Ambrose Park. So this cost is to survey Ambrose Park and the area behind the Rumney Marsh, because there's a possibility we might put Ambrose Park into play as temporary parking or some support during the construction phase. Want me to just go into the phase 2 portion?
Yeah, and
Sure.
I will just note to the committee that we've started up some other meetings with the site working group, and I think you're going to probably see one more expansion of this survey in the future, in a coming meeting later in the month or next month. We have to work out some of the details, but that relates to surveying 50, 70 feet up every street that butts into that property, so we can make some of the utility transitions and grade transitions. So I'm just warning you that I think there's one more expansion of survey costs coming in the future.
Yes, that's correct. The
Dan,
second
can-
one is,
Oh.
sure,
Can I ask a question now, or I should wait till the end?
Nope, it's fine.
you can ask a question now.
I'm just wondering, the area of Ambrose Park and behind the Rumney Marsh is so much smaller than the rest of the property that we're talking about. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering why the cost of that survey is relatively high compared to those area ratios.
It's the bounding of the properties, of all the little properties that are around it. So they have to do bounds on all the little houses that are around all these, along that align these things. So that's how they explained it to me, because I asked the same question and they said, well, the bigger site's a lot of site work, but and a lot that's larger in area, but this other area has this other thing going on with all these little properties that abound it, just like the main site does, but there's just as many there as there are at the other site. So it's really about surveying each one of the property lines at each house.
Okay,
Wouldn't that be
Can I-
something that the city has on file? This seems like an enormous amount of money to survey an empty park full of grass that's gonna be a temporary parking lot. It may be something that we can look at on the city's GIS and see something that,
I know you do have drawings of it. We can look at those before we cut this guy loose on it and see if what we have is adequate for what we need to do right now.
that would be appreciated. And maybe
So
Nick,
this-
can Nick help with that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I can provide all of the, plans and maps that we have. I have some from, previous projects, the high school previously, Rumney Marsh previously. I think those are all plans that we have provided
Yep.
to the here. We can look a little bit more. I don't think that we have much more than that. But we can certainly double check.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Moving on to the phase 2. This is about, we did a phase 1, which uncovers the potential for underground or geologically or geo-environmentally sensitive areas that need to have further study. And there were several areas on this site that that engineer deemed necessary for us to go back and look at if we were going to use this site. Now that we are back on this site, we do need to do a phase 2 here. I carried an allowance for that, and they came back with a significantly higher price. So basically I was wrong about my allowance. And the last one is the Wonderland ANRAD and Conservation Commission. The survey group that was out there, there were a lot more wetlands at the Wonderland site, and they had to survey a lot more flags than they had originally included, and they're making a request for an additional $8,000 to cover the cost of surveying the flags in basically the old track area, which nobody anticipated would be a wetland of that size and turned out to be, and they ended up having to survey those flags and translate them to the actual survey that we have for that property.
We're gonna stay on this for a minute, so if anyone raises a hand, we can hit the questions. But I'm gonna jump to this slide. Again, you can tell when the OPM created something because it looks like this. I just wanted to explain how we propose to pay for these. So starting at the top, the existing site survey, total value 61,200, the budgeted value 39,300, results in a $21,900 overrun. We have $24,800 within Perkins Eastman's contract as a contingency. So if we were to use that contingency, we'd still come to you. We'd still make sure the building committee's okay with it, but it's not a contract amendment and we don't have to move money. So we're proposing to pay the survey out of the contingency. If something comes up in further discussions with Nick in the city that we don't need to expend this money would then just stay in their contingency. In the end, if the contingency is not used, it's unspent, it gets returned to the city, nobody keeps it. Phase 2 site investigations overran by 23. So we're suggesting to just empty out the remaining contingency. There's only 2,900 after we subtract the 21,900 and hit the project contingency, those columns, that 269,000 for the balance, 20,527. Which again, zeroes out the contingency within Perkins Eastman's contract. So the wetlands follow-up item would be entirely borne by the project contingency. So as you can see in this middle chart, Perkins Eastman had 24,800 in their contingency. We're proposing to burn it all now, leaving zero in that contingency. So all our contingencies in one place. The 269 after the contract amendment that we're looking at tonight in the budget revision request to move the money would have $240,658 remaining in completely uncommitted contingency.
So a question,
Yeah.
since we talked about the survey, maybe having some more information or maybe parking that, do we want to fund the phase 2 investigations out of my contingency fully and park the survey?
I would prefer to keep it the way it's on the screen, Dan, because I want to be able to act quickly. It's going to take a little bit to review information the city has. The survey team's going to be out there in the coming weeks. And even if we decide that we're not going to be able to translate whatever info the city has, I want to be able to say go to that survey person at a day's notice, couple days notice. So I would propose we keep it like this. And if we undershoot that 21,900, it means there'll be a value remaining here in the PE contingency, which again comes back to the city if it's never spent. It's open book accounting. That money will not disappear.
Brian, I got a question.
Yes.
We just funded all these contracts from scratch, so we haven't even really got out of the gate yet. Why do we have to already use up an entire contingency? Because this is all time and material type work. It's not like we have some specific amount for this work. Why can't we just continue on? Because we may have some savings in the end, ultimately anyway.
It's really that Dan needs to sign the contracts with his sub-consultants, and we need the ability to tell these consultants that their proposal, which did exceed the budgeted value that that we had a few months ago, is approved. And if that's not approved, we can't tell them to move. We can't tell them to go.
So this is separate from the money we've already appropriated for Perkins Eastman?
For Perkins Eastman, let me
They're not paying any other subcontractors out of the amount of the total contract we just about to sign with them?
their total
Well, we're paying
contract
quite a
probably
few out
has
of that.
15, 20
Right,
subcontracts.
so why can't we just use the existing money and see where we're at the end? Why are we so quick to burn through contingency is my question.
Because everybody has a lump sum contract. So I can't do it that way. They're not hourly, they're not T&M. They're
That
all
money's
lump sum.
committed. That money's
So it's all
committed.
committed.
So that was my question. These are some specific amounts. This isn't time and material.
Yeah, they're specific. They're not T and M.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And even though I told you, I think the survey is going to expand a little bit more, I don't envision this being a monthly thing. This
No.
really is, as we've kicked these sub-consultants into gear and they're really digging into details, some of these, well, you know, I didn't carry Ambrose Park in the survey. That was a miscommunication on our part. That number would have been in there if we caught that before. So the contracts
Yeah,
approved in
would
April
have been that number.
would have been exactly this much more. It's really a lag, a miss on our part, but the money would have been in there.
So I'd
Okay,
like
thank-
to make oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
No, I was just saying thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
So I'm thinking that do we need a motion to approve the amendment to use the 28,000 from the owner's contingency?
Yes, that's really the core of the motion, because that is a contract amendment that then needs a budget revision request. The utilization of contingency is, there's no paperwork associated with that. That's just part of the committee motion. So I propose some wording here that includes both. The committee is authorizing usage of the internal contingency and agreeing that we'll move the value via budget revision request BRR 6 from the owner's contingency into Dan's contract. And these both should say BRR 6, by the way. Of course, I see the typo at the last minute. That says BRR 7. They both should say BRR 6.
Brian, I know that there were some things when they did the original survey, including the utilities and all that, that never got completed on the first phase.
Yep.
How does that money come into play where they never did some of the work they originally contracted to do?
They really weren't contracted to
They
do that,
weren't.
Carl.
Yeah, no one was
it's-
contracted to survey the high school site. We only, we
had
did
this
the Windmill Inn
conversation.
site only.
I
No,
think
I
I asked this
understand.
I've asked this question multiple times during the original site survey, and I was told it was gonna be done, and at that time, nobody ever told me that that wasn't in the contract. I was always told that it was gonna be done.
I don't believe that's the case, Carl. And when the project went to Wonderland, that means no work was carried at the existing site. I understand there's utility issues over there. We were going to try to talk to National Grid as we were talking Wonderland with them to ask some questions to solve the issues you have back at the existing site, but we don't have contracts with Dan's surveyors and geotech people that say you owe us that. That money was not built into their prior contracts.
So I will make a motion to send the Perkins Eastman contract amendment number 2.
Second.
Is it all right if we use the language that's on the screen and use that as the motion? Because
fine
MSBA
with that.
specifically needs to see BRR 6, because that's a piece of paperwork that goes to them. They want to know that BRR 6 and contract amendment 2 are approved.
I'm fine. I just couldn't say all those words.
That's okay.
Susan, you still okay with seconding that?
Yes, I am.
Perfect, thank you. I'll do a roll call for this motion, starting with Stacy Rizzo,
Yes,
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
No,
Christopher Bowen,
Yes.
Joanne McKenna,
Joanne, you're on mute.
Yes.
thank you. Rich Biscay,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
Jerry Visconti.
Yes.
Okay, noted, thank you.
Linda, is that enough for approval?
Yes,
Okay, and we can proceed. Otherwise, we wouldn't be proceeding and we'd be blowing our schedule.
Yep, we have 8 approvals.
Okay. We're gonna move on to the next agenda item 5. And this is really, I'm gonna hit the important dates. We wanted to highlight the proposed committee meetings. I'm gonna go forward a slide. This long slide, we're not gonna go through. You probably can't even read it that well, but I do encourage you folks to maybe even print this out and try your best to sort of absorb it. This page gets us in a sequence of when decisions need to be made, particularly out in the September, October, November, December timeframe. They tie to specific meetings, specific building committee meetings. Certain meetings we're going to propose are joint meetings with the school committee, and ultimately city council meetings. What's not on here is project updates to the city council. I'm going to reach out to Joanne, to Jerry, and see in the coming months how we want to feed some of the updates that you folks are seeing tonight to the city council. But this page and the back end of the next page are pretty important to just sort of look at. They shouldn't evolve that much, but as these dates bend a little bit, we'll update this. But highlight dates, school building committee meetings. We're looking for another meeting later this month. 1 meeting in July, 2 in August, 2 in September, 2 in October, 3 in November, and the December meetings will be TBD. So we'll pause here for a second. We don't have to figure it out tonight, but we'd like to send out Zooms for all these, just so this is on everyone's radar. And maybe if folks want to check into it, the specific issues, specific dates we might need to look at, that's fine. But just wanted to highlight these to the committee so we can sort of get all these on everybody's calendar.
Brian, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
So one of my proposals tonight, I was going to ask the committee if we could have a liaison come to council maybe either once a month or every other month to give an update to the council on what's going on. I know this is broadcast on Revere TV, but I know a lot of councilors don't watch it. I think what happened last time was there wasn't enough transparency and a lot of councilors didn't feel they had enough information. So I was just wondering if it's the committee's will to have some sort of liaison to come up, and it could be anyone, I don't care, just to give an update. You could read the minutes, what we went through, a short presentation of what we went through, just to keep the council, you know, up to date on what you're doing here. And I think it's really important. So it's the will of the committee here, but I just think it would be a great idea. So I'll leave it to you
I agree.
guys.
Joanne, I just want to say, I mean, I agree with the transparency piece. I was just surprised that minutes from these meetings were never shared with the council prior.
No,
There's 2 members on this, and I was kind of surprised they weren't sharing this information.
I think it should be on the agenda, either every month, that someone comes up and talks about it, because no, it was, the minutes were never shared to the council. So the council really didn't know what was going on. And I know a lot of councilors will not watch this on Revere TV. So I'm just asking if we could have presence in front of the council. That would be wonderful. And I think it would open up, what you guys are trying to do. I know I'm a part of it now, but what you guys are trying to do here, I think it would be very helpful for the information to go right to the council in person, monthly. And, I don't care who the liaison is, but I really do think that this committee needs to share that in front of the council. That's just
Brian,
my,
this is Jim, while we need to hear from the will of the committee, that wasn't that goal to have more regular
Oh, yeah.
interludes with the council?
I agree, and I think it's a great idea. I'll definitely, anytime the project's on the agenda, I'll definitely be there. We can run through some of these presentations or shortened versions of them, summary info. But I do think actually, Councilor McKenna's idea is good, that perhaps other than left field, maybe someone from this committee should go to express some of their opinions. So it's not always coming from your OPM, but we'll go to any meetings the city, the council, the committee want us to go to.
Well, we can create a subcommittee before the regular committee meeting. So you guys can come up and talk. You can have a half an hour or whatever you need.
That'd be great.
Just to give everybody the information that, you know, they need to know. So, because going forward at the end, we want everybody to be on the same page and we want everybody to vote for a new school. So that's just my take on it. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Joanne, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I have to say, as somebody who's been doing this work for over 3 years, I'm just wondering at what point is it the responsibility of the city council to engage themselves? These meetings were all posted
I know.
publicly on the city website, and I worry that we're going to be doing all of this work as a building committee, as we've committed to do for the last 3 years, and then appear in front of a somewhat uninformed council if they're choosing not to be part of the process, or not to listen to the information, or not read the agendas, or not watch the videos, or not read the minutes, or do any of those things. And we're going to be at the whim of their thoughts in the moment when we've spent months planning and talking about something. I really worry about that, because I know that there is tension right now between myself and the council, and the school department and the council, and the school building committee and the council. But I do feel like if we're going to engage in this together, then they have to engage in it as willing partners. And, you know, the last time we went to share information with them, they refused to hear us. We had a presentation put together that was going to give them information on next steps on where we would be going with restarting the schematic design at the existing high school site. And city councilors refused to allow that presentation to go forward. Brian Dakin and myself sat there for some time and then were summarily dismissed. And I just worry that if that's the attitude that people are going to have toward us going there, then I don't want to waste my time going there once a month.
Well, this is what I can say, Diane. I respect what you're saying, but it's a new day. And I think it's a new time, and it's a new plan. And I think we should forget about, you know, all the animosity that came between everybody and start fresh and new. And I think this is a great idea. I think the council will be receptive with this. And like I said, it's a new day, and it's a new plan. And let's just, I know you can't forget about the past. It was very bitter. But let's just start on a good note, and a new, you know, a new plan, and let's just go forward now without any animosity. Let's start anew. And
I love that idea. I do.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
And Joanne, going forward, can the people that are on this committee forward everything as we get it to the council so that they're always updated?
Sure, but I think it would be.
I
Go
thought
ahead,
that would be part of the reason for the council to be on here, is to share the information back. Like, you know, Diane updates the school committee all the time on this process, and it would be good if the council members on this committee would have shared it with the council. And I don't think we would have ever gotten to this point of animosity, I guess.
Well, like I said, it's a new day. I will be willing to share whatever you have available. I will be willing to share this to the council, but I really do think it would be more effective if someone came up as a liaison with this committee and we had updates regularly until the process goes through. So
Yeah.
this is just my feeling.
If I can interject for a second,
Sure.
Joanne, I agree with you 100%. And if in talking to Brian Daking, I think that was the objective moving forward this time.
Right.
which was not the case in the past. And so I thought Brian was in agreement of doing that. Now,
Yeah.
didn't we have those conversations, Brian, about that?
Oh, yeah, this is, if the committee doesn't want someone else to go, I'm still gonna go.
Okay.
We
I would rather,
have to do this.
I would rather the council hear it from Mr. Dakin rather than one of the city councilors conveying the messages over to them. I would rather have Brian or somebody else conveying that information over.
I wasn't going to be the liaison. I was just gonna pass the, all these presentations. I would have
Well,
printed them up and given it to the council. But
well, with all
I'd
due
rather
respect,
Go ahead.
with all due respect, Joanne, I don't think you should have to. I think every Brian and people that are running the meeting have the information and can easily pass that along via email to the council as well. So I don't think it should be your responsibility to do that, Joanne.
Okay, but I really do think it, personally, as sitting on this council and going through what we went through for the last, the last 6 months, I really think it would be very effective for someone to come up every month and just give either the meeting or a synopsis or a presentation, a short presentation, Brian, of what you just, gave to us.
Yep.
So we have a better understanding, because I know these counselors and I know Diane, I know what you're saying, they have, the access to all this information, but I have to say that I, watched maybe 1 or 2 meetings and that was it. Because I really didn't have the time. I should have made the time, but I'll be the first one to admit that I watched maybe 1 or 2 meetings and that was it. So in the 2 years that you guys were presenting. So it got lost somewhere in transition. I don't know, but I just think it would be more effective if a person came up, Brian, you, whoever, and just presented, the minutes or a small synopsis or a small presentation. That's just my feelings. You guys can do whatever you want with it, but I feel that would be so effective and important.
Yep. Jim Rogers again, we're willing to do a presentation monthly. I don't know if we need a vote to do that, or what, but we're certainly willing to make a short presentation to the city council on a monthly basis to keep them updated. So whatever we need for approval to move forward with that, we're happy to do that. But I think we're all in agreement here.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I don't necessarily think we need a motion, but what I was going to do is I'll reach out to Councilors Visconti and McKenna and just check in on the schedule for this month's moving forward, and we'll, pick the right dates and just plan on it. We'll put it on the agenda and we'll consolidate. If we've had 1 meetings, if we've had 2 meetings of this group, we'll consolidate the info and kind of create that feedback loop so we can be coming back to this committee as well. And if this committee didn't have the time to watch the council meetings, I can summarize council questions, council opinions, reactions, et cetera, and sort of create that loop.
Great. And all I want to say is, all you have to do is call Ashley and she'll put you on the agenda
Okay.
whenever you feel, when we have the next meeting or whatever. When the meetings are planned, all you have to do is call Ashley. But
Okay.
you have to be put on the agenda.
Yep.
So thank
Great.
you. Thank you.
Next item, Brian.
Sounds good. Are we at the fun stuff? Hold on, let me keep clicking. So again, I know I've already said it, but this is a good page to just print out and just try to digest. And this is something that this is one of the slides that I'm gonna do a little condensed version for the city council, because this really lays out what's the path, when it's gonna be updates, when are the update dates gonna turn into final presentations, when are their decisions, et cetera. So a lot of text there, but that's worth looking at. Agenda item 6, just 2 working groups, not subcommittees, but rather working groups of this committee. This can include folks that aren't on either committee, school committee, building committee, city council. We've kicked these into gear with the design team. These are really detail oriented. They can sometimes go on pretty long meetings. but we've relaunched these. These are meetings that we did last time around. We're doing them again here. The design working group is going to deal with interior materials, exterior materials, design elements. That's something that Dawn from Perkins Eastman really leads these meetings with the rest of us on there. Mike Picardi, Chris Chiaramella, Rich Galucci, and Chris Bowen were the people that I think participated last time around. Dawn Chiaramella participated last time around, but we understand Chris is leaning into his role. So we're looking to do these on a monthly basis and the week after these meetings, so that we can sort of bring some of the ideas you're going to see tonight in the funner part of the meeting into more resolution. So we have these meetings laid out for June 15th, July 27th, August 17th, September 14th. If anyone else should join this, we're all ears. But this is a solid group to begin with. And the other group is about site, which is going to talk a lot about, the site layout, Article 97, the handling the park there, what's going on with the culvert, what do we do with phasing, temporary parking, all that good stuff. That's something that Carl was the point guy on, and Nick and Chris are involved with those meetings. We're going to do those bi-weeklies, Wednesday at 9 a.m. We started them up this week and reviewed some of the info that you guys are going to sort of look at tonight. So this is more of an update, just throwing it out there. If these two things, whether it's design or site utilization, how this building wedges into that neighborhood, if you think there's other folks that could help, let us know. We'll extend the invite to them and make sure their input's involved.
So
Excuse me. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Susan.
Oh, thank you. I see that you have a specific time for the second working site, the on-site group. Just for those members that are here now, I see that apparently I'm the point person for our interior, exterior.
You did a great job last time.
I will reach out to those members who aren't here or who, that are on the group and try to set up some times. We'll start off with Zoom, obviously, until we get to the nitty gritty and we're picking out materials. And then we'll meet in person just to see, feel, and touch the materials like we did last time to get a better understanding and, try to lay it all out and put it all together. So I will do that. Tomorrow I'll reach out to that group and try to get something worked out with them.
Brian, can I just piggyback on Susan? Thank you, Susan. And you can coordinate with me as well. And I'm happy to do it during the day, which I think is what we did last time. And I'm happy to come to Revere whenever I need to in person. I think those were successful meetings. The other thing I wanted to say, so just loop me in and whatever time works for the bigger group, I can be available. Diane, if there are others from an educational standpoint that should be participating in this, because we're sort of going back to some building block basics, like where things are and adjacencies and programs. If there's someone that's not on that list that you think should be, feel free to include them.
And I think Chris Bowen will work on having a couple of the teachers join that.
Perfect.
Maybe a little bit later when we have a better understanding of what the building might look like and where exactly it might be located. That will, I think, determine who are the right people. So, last time we included some folks from our fine arts department because of what we were planning to do with the theater. With the auditorium and the outside, the two-sided stage and all those kinds of things. But if those kinds of options are gone, then it probably wouldn't be a fine arts person, but maybe there's somebody else who could weigh in. We could definitely add a couple people. And just while I'm saying that, looking at the site working group, just because these issues like traffic and Article 97 and the culvert and the parking and all of that have monetary issues associated with them. I think that we should have a city councilor on that committee. And like you said, it doesn't necessarily need to be Joanne or Jerry because they're on the building committee. It could be, maybe there's a different city councilor that we want to invite to participate in that work. Just so that the city council, again, is clear about the costs and those pieces that are going to come in with those sections of the site work. And I don't know how others on the building committee feel about that. So please, I invite my other colleagues on the committee to weigh in.
Diane, I think maybe the ward counselor should be at least considered. I don't know exactly who the ward counselor is right now for the existing high school site or if it's actually split, but including the Ambrose Park area, but that may be a suggestion because they're probably gonna get the most feedback from the residents surrounding the site. And it may just be a suggestion to somebody who may want to jump on here.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea, Carl. That's a really good suggestion. And if the committee doesn't mind, I'll reach out to the ward counselor and I can CC Joanne and Jerry and just mention this came up. We think you might be the right person. Could you make these meetings?
Do you know who the ward counselor is?
I think it's all Ward 3.
I think it's Anthony Cogliandro.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the map now. It is a good point. I think both sides are in Ward 3, but we'll confirm.
It is exactly Cogliandro.
And is that for the on-site working group only, or did you want counselors at the interior, exterior working group?
Great if they want to join that. I think it's important that we have somebody on the site working group because that's where I anticipate there'll be controversy. I don't think there'll be as much controversy over our color palette and our glass refinements. So
that's true. And at our last when we were doing the interior exterior design committee, we did meet at City Hall, but I'd like to suggest that Dawn, since you met us with materials, that maybe we can move that to somewhere and meet at Riviera High School. That way more teachers or educators may want to be involved have a better chance to participate.
Happy to do that. Yep.
Okay. As long as that's
And
okay with
maybe
you,
we can-
Diane.
Yeah, I was going to ask if we could use like the school committee's room or if there's another conference room that you could, we can coordinate time and obviously the dates are in front of us, but if, whenever.
yeah, that's not a problem. We'll find space.
Excellent. Thank you. I mean, summer should be fairly easy, right?
That's right.
All good ideas. And I think this is another good one to throw out at the next council update. Just be like, if someone is interested in the design component, let us know. We'll put you on the invite. I don't see any other hands, and I think this officially gets us to the fun stuff. So I'm going to hand the screen over to Dawn.
So while Dawn sets herself up, by way of introduction, we have a couple of new team members here tonight. I think I mentioned last time that we were going to add a few new faces. Mark McCarthy is here from our New York office, and he's going to be helping us with the design. Nasra, who you've probably seen before, is also here. Leah Schroeder is joining our team from the Boston office. So we have a couple of new faces who are helping us along the way on this new design on the School Street site. So I'm going to turn it over to Dawn and Mark to bring you through where we're at right now.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. I feel like it's been a while because I missed the last meeting. So good to be back with you guys. And hold on, I have to do it with apparently I can't do it on my keyboard to advance the slides. Sorry about that. So we just want to we're going to be brief, but want to give you an update on what we've been working on and some reminders about the design and some of the educational components and goals, because those, even though the site is now different, the educational goals remain and the program remains. So the building itself, the size of it and all the programs inside of it is the same in everything you see today, and the same as what was previously shown on the Wonderland site. and the vision is still the same. So you guys have seen this diagram. I think it's almost 3 years old, but just want to bring you back to the basics because this is where we started before we had any designs. This is really a diagram, bubble diagram of adjacencies and visioning. I think this was our second or third visioning session that we did back with David Stephen. But what came out of it were real design goals and educational visions for the building. What we have here is the central spine, the heart of the school. That remains. That's a place where students can see and be seen. It's really the central point of the school. We've got the classroom bars off on the left that are blue, and those are intermixed with tech spaces that all connect back to that heart of the school. We've got clusters and neighborhoods within the classroom wings, lots of variety of spaces. And of course, we've got the community spaces, health and wellness, the gymnasium, the auditorium, that all remains. That all wants to feed off of that heart of the school. And we want to make those indoor-outdoor connections still and have a focus on wellness. And Mark will speak a little bit about that. But lastly, have access to community, lock off as appropriate for security. And then lastly, we want it to be a place that not only the students day to day and faculty and staff, but also the community wants to visit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark to speak a little bit about each of these. And you could just tell me to advance, Mark. I'll drive.
Okay, thanks. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Hi,
Yep.
everyone. It's great to be here. Yeah, we just wanted to, as Dawn said, for us, sites might change, buildings configuration change, but these fundamental design goals and all the good work that was put into that remain the same, right? And we carry that forward. So this idea of the heart of the school, not just the heart of the school, but also the extended use, right? We want every space to kind of do double, triple duty, right? So it's nice to have these big spaces where people can gather, or as Dawn said, where folks can see and be seen, and that creates community. But we also want those to be working spaces. We want the cafeteria not just to be the 3 periods of lunch. We want it to be a space for learning, an all-day kind of space. You can go to the next slide. Same thing with the flexible and agile classrooms. And one thing for all of us who work on schools and work with schools and in schools know things change. So we build buildings that are 50 or more years. They're going to be used differently. We want to make sure that we're creating space that's going to give you that flexibility, the adaptability over time. Next slide. Neighborhood clusters, and I think we'll talk about this, and Dawn will talk about it a little bit when we look at some of our early ideas for the new site or the existing site. We still want to create a scale that that allows students and faculty to have a sense of community even within a school, a larger school. So breaking that down, I think architecture and the design can definitely help to do that. Like you see on the image to the lower right, with the green, right? Having this sort of home base within the school where students kind of say, well, this is my spot, right? This is kind of, whether that's by grade or subject matter, we'll get into that. Next slide. And of course, it's still, it still will be a campus, and we want to sort of capture those ideas, even the lower rendering, which I think was from the interview going back a ways, but it's always been there that the building should connect with the outdoors, and not just connect with the outdoors, but have learning extend into the outdoor space. And I think that's something that we still hold high in our priorities. And yeah, just finally, the idea of well-being, and we'll talk about this all the time as architects, right? That's a big thing for us, is that the building is the building is comfortable, that we're using daylight to its best advantage, that it's healthy, material choices, all those things, as we're going through this crazy weather pattern that we're going through, right? The building really plays a big part of that, and that's always on our mind. So I'm going to talk really briefly about some of the strategies for I hope I say it right, the Aracolis site. And then Dawn will walk through some of our ideas. So if we just go through this, Dawn, I'll just take a few minutes. So as we know, the site, I don't know if the site's technically smaller than the other site we're looking at, but at least it has some constraints, right? It has the culvert, it has the existing school on it. So the footprint we're looking to work with is tighter, which will cause the building, as we'll see, get a little bit taller. But we're not just kind of maxing that out. We're looking at strategies that can still bring a lot of scale and a lot of harmony to the design. One of those is to use some different size spaces, both how that works programmatically and in terms of how it'll fit in the neighborhood. Next slide. We're looking at the materials that we use, the scale of what we're using, how the building works with the orientation, with light and shadow. I think those are all really important things that we'll look at. So it's not just, well, is the building bigger, is the building taller, but how are we designing it to make it sort of relate to the site, relate to the activities that are going on there. And of course, as we talked about that wellness, bringing light into the building is incredibly important. I think all of our schemes sort of take that into consideration. And I think this is my last slide. Also, and you'll see this in some of the, and I think this was at the previous site as well, right? Because we have parking and we have some different levels. We want to make sure that the building connects on many levels and works. And so you're never too far away from some outdoor access or really taking advantage, even when we need to maybe take advantage of some roofscapes as outdoor space and to extend the school program outdoors. I think all of these things are kind of the tools in our toolbox. Okay.
Sorry, it's difficult when I'm sharing full screen. My little thing of to not mute disappears on me, so apologies. And my mouse is going crazy too. So thank you for bearing with me. So let's get to the design options. As you know, this is back at the Aracola site. We've looked at this previously. We have schemes for this previously, but we decided we took what was previously shown, put it onto the site, doesn't fit, right? Like it's just bigger than the actual footprint of Aracola Park. So with that, we want to show you tonight 4 new design options on the Aracola Park that all leave the existing building to remain and be functional and useful and not disruptive, split the site basically in half. And we wanted to look at what we could potentially do with them. So this is just a preview. I'll come back to this at the end. This is kind of just showing you all 4 at quick glance. If you
Dawn,
remember,
I jump in for just
yeah,
1 second.
go ahead,
I don't mean to nitpick, but what Dawn meant by that is the existing school can function during construction. It would
Yes,
then
sorry.
be knocked down to replace the park. Yep.
That's right. So so we would take over the park. So basically the multi-purpose field as well as the baseball field, leave the existing Revere High School, be cordoned off from a safety standpoint, and that will remain while this building is built. Thank you, Brian, for clarifying that. So if you remember our scheme that we all were on board with and spent a lot of time on at Wonderland, we took that as a building block and said, oh, well, it doesn't fit. It's too big on this site. But what's great about it? Well, we had the 2 academic wings, which we're still showing. In the Wonderland site, it was split kind of in half. They were equal and they curved, if you remember, because we had a little bit more real estate. There was a nice wave to it. That definitely won't fit on this site with just the basic geometry, sort of the triangular / bow tie shape of this site. But we took those 2 academic wings and said, well, what if we made a pure freshman academy? That was definitely an educational goal that we took 2 floors at the Wonderland design, and then the upper 2 floors were 10 through 12 as well as the other wing. We said, what if we in this design did a pure freshman academy, still 4 floors, shortened it, which is what's being shown here. Okay. But then the other wing got a little bit longer and 2 stories taller. These are all the grades 10 through 12 academic classrooms. So 6-story academic wing for 10 through 12, pure freshman academy, 4-story. And then the other building blocks, of course, are the auditorium, gymnasium, and then the heart of the school. So you'll see all of these illustrated in each design. And what becomes important is where they all are in relation to each other and how they fit on the site. So this is really an adaptation, this first version, this H scheme we're calling it, because it kind of looks like an H, and how the heart of the school runs down the middle, and then there's two sort of wings feeding off of it. It is not dissimilar to what was shown on Wonderland, just with a taller, like I said, 10 through 12, and then a 4-story freshman academy. Heart of the school, the auditorium had to rotate in the, it was a little bit closer to the gym at the end of the heart of the school on the Wonderland site, but of course it wouldn't fit. You can see how close we are here. But what this does is adapts it, that same sort of adjacency model, adapts it to this site. So the downside is we've got this fairly tall academic wing up against the parking lot and a little bit up against this neighborhood to the north. The gym's a little bit far from where the replacement field. So you can imagine the existing buildings off to the left of the screen. Those will become the Article 97, the replacement of the fields at the end of the project when the existing building is torn down. In an ideal world, the gym would be closer to that. But as you can see, this is a pinch point, the triangulation of this site. So it literally wouldn't fit. Like if you tried to, and we looked at all this too, just so you know, flip the gym and auditorium, just physically wouldn't fit. So this is the other side. This is just for reference, Rumney Marsh. This is the roadway, the existing Revere High School, you can see here, and then the hill that takes you up to the south. And the red is always shown for the culvert, because of course that's a constraint that we're between the culvert, the the roadway, and then the neighborhood and the existing building. You can see kind of the real estate we're left with.
So
And-
can you, sorry, Dawn, can you go
Yeah.
back?
I sure can.
I noticed that you're showing the shadowing of the freshman academy
Yep.
and the building wing, but it looks like that shadowing impact has been not drawn on the Rumney Marsh Academy.
Yeah, for
And
some
I'm
reason-
wondering, I'm
This-
sorry?
I noticed that too. Like this one, it does. I think it might
Yeah.
just the way that I think it's on the wall, but not on the roof. Does that make sense? Like I think it hits this end of it. I don't know.
Okay,
And then this drops down. This is actually lower because this is higher. See where that steps? So I think the line is like right through here. I think
You
it's
can
an
see the tiny little triangle there at the edge.
yeah,
bottom of it.
yeah. So you'll see in the other ones, it actually does when the
Yep.
when the academics are flipped, but that's a good observation, Diane. It just clips this house too. And just for reference, this shading is like late November, end of day, I think. So like I tried, it's not worst case scenario. I guess I could run a December 21st and run a worst case, but this is a pretty bad case, meaning it's like low light, right? So because the sun will be higher kind of this time of year.
it's just,
Doesn't the
Diane.
shadow, I'm sorry, doesn't the shadow change all day long? Like,
It does. Yep,
what-
this is
so-
just a snapshot. Yep,
Yeah, so like, do you need to put a time of day when you put a shadow on an image?
yeah. I mean, I can tell you that it's, well, I need to switch from full screen, but it's November and I want to say it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, November 21st.
so what would be of more interest would be the worst case scenario. So yeah, the December 21st, shortest day of the year. And maybe like sometime between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
Okay, I can run that for you.
Just, it's of interest to me to understand, you know, we talked before about the biophilic design. What does that do to the RMA
Mhm.
in terms of shadowing?
Do you want me to run it real quick? I literally have it open.
Sure.
Diane, I'm more concerned with the residents behind the academic wing, which on this screen would be to the right. That's the gym and the loading dock and the kitchen. That side of that building of RMA doesn't have any windows really. There is some natural lighting, but that's all pretty much a solid building. I think,
Well, on the front side, Carl, where the cafeteria is, that's all glass.
right, but so the sun is basically comes up directly across from that, which is the east, and rotates around like a clock.
Yeah.
Clockwise, and so by say noontime, the sun would be on the corner of that gym, the far left-hand corner. and it basically sets on the far right side of the high school. So anything on this image to the right and upper right would be completely shadowed.
I'm sorry, I didn't have the context in the model that I had opened, so I was gonna, I'll get that for you. I
Yeah,
don't
do,
wanna waste
maybe
our
do it
time
for
today.
next time,
But,
Dawn. I know
yep,
you probably
you
want to
got it.
think about it before you show it
December
to us.
21st, midday. I can tell you that in this scheme, it just barely nicks this.
Okay.
And I just ran it. It's just, I don't have the model open with the massing because it's so cumbersome.
Mhm.
And so it just hits this short elevation at the end of RMA,
Okay.
December 21st at noon.
Can I ask a question about the 6-story academic wing?
Sure, Chris.
And perhaps this is something discussed in the previous go around before I was on this committee, but I'm not familiar with any schools that have a 6-story academic wing, and I could be misinformed on that, but I have questions in terms of how that works, in terms of, are we having kids and adults who are regularly needing to climb 6 flights of stairs every day to get to their first period? When I think about evacuation and school safety and some of those things, I'm just kind of, my mind is going through the implications of having a 6-story or a 6-flight academic wing and what that looks like. I am just curious, and it could be many 6-story buildings that I'm just not aware of. I just am curious if you could speak to how common that is and if there are any considerations we should be thinking about there.
Yeah, and I am, our team, feel free to chime in. I'm aware of multiple 5-story. I've never done a 6-story. We're working on a 5-story in Lowell High School, and also I believe BAA, Boston Arts Academy in Boston, was 5 stories. I looked earlier, I think Dearborn, which we didn't design, that's either 4 or 5 stories also in Boston. A lot of them are urban schools that start to go that tall, Chris. The tallest I've ever done is 5 stories, but it's.
I can chime in. Hi,
Sure, Mark.
Mark.
That's.
Yeah, from being from New York, our office in New York City. So yeah, we've done them. But I think, so safety wise, obviously there's code and everything. So I don't think I won't say there's no safety issue, but I think those things are clear. I think the other thing is programmatically, typically what we'll do is, that sort of neighborhood idea. So it's not that, hopefully we're minimizing that kind of travel that's happening many times during the day, right? So if we're clustering grade by grade or by departments and things like that, when we get into the program, that's another strategy for it. But we can certainly look at other schools that do 6 or more floors.
I was going to also reach out to MSBA and ask them the question and get some contacts from some other area, most likely Eastern Mass schools. I doubt once you get out west there's anything that tall, but we're going to ask the MSBA team that question, get some folks for the educational people to talk to, and not to derail this too much, but just to, as you're seeing this, I wanted the committee to understand why this is being considered. You've already hit upon 2 very smart things. The challenges are going to be shadows, impact to neighbors, and most importantly, impact to the delivery of education and how this would work. Those things need more analysis. They need more discussion with the school. It's something I really want to focus on. The benefits of doing this are mainly financial. All of the culvert diagrams you're seeing in here, we're trying to not move the culvert. That doesn't mean the culvert might not need to be fixed, replaced, on-site, off-site, but all of these options you're seeing tonight do not move the culvert. The culvert could have its own destiny. The school project could have its own destiny. There's going to be some overlap there. We'll have to discuss that. We'll work with Nick, with the Chiramellas, with the city to figure this all out. But going up in the academic wing to 6 keeps us off the culvert and potentially keeps us from taking away your existing parking, which triggers needing Ambrose Park to put temp parking on. So those 2 items, the culvert and needing to take over Ambrose Park, turn it into temporary parking, then put the park back, are 2 of the biggest cost drivers of why our early estimates showed this as a more expensive site. So the wins in going more compact and vertical is you might not need to, as part of this phase project, deal with the culvert right now. And we might be able to drop Ambrose Park totally out of this discussion. If the state tells us we have to replace these parks in advance, we then wouldn't need to replace the Ambrose Park area. It would stay online for the community to use. So I'm not trying to sound like a salesman. We have to look a lot more into the academic part of this. And as Carl and Diane pointed out, we've got to be all over shadow studies. But the benefit here is trying to get a project that isn't 60 or $70 million more expensive than what we thought it was a while ago, for something that the city's really not getting any bang for the buck in terms of temp parking, et cetera. So just wanted to put that out there, and I see a few hands up.
Yeah,
Susan?
I think Chris, was that your only question or did you have more? Your hand's still up.
Oh, sorry, I'm on my phone. I did not realize my hand's
Oh,
up.
no,
I'll
that's
take that
okay.
down.
I just wanted to make sure we got to all your questions. And Susan,
you.
I see your
Appreciate
hand. Yeah,
Thank you. Am I next? I can't see whose hands are up.
Yeah,
I'm on my
yeah.
phone as well. I just had a question. It would be great if we did not need to take Ambrose Park, and kept the existing parking lot for student and faculty. My question is where will the construction vehicles be entering and exiting from, and how will that impact the existing parking lot and the safety of the students and faculty?
Susan, I've been thinking about that a lot. That's something that we're gonna, Consigli's still your CM. They're sort of they're gonna be coming back, and the rubber's gonna hit the road again for them in July. That's the fee we worked out. That's gonna be a prime topic with them. I think we're gonna try to route all the traffic off Route 60. All of it. I'm not
The
sure how we're gonna
construction
pull that off.
traffic?
Yes. Now, yeah, good point. Not final traffic. That's a whole different discussion, but we know that jams out, but we certainly don't want to be bringing big rigs back through not only through the city and through the residential streets, but right through the pinch point, through your front door at the existing site. The goal is to make this a little island that RMA operates, RHS operates. We put up a fence and we stay within that fence. And as we go through these 4 options, I'm going to sound like a salesman at the end again. I think 2 of these options, one in particular, achieves those goals very well. We back further off the existing parking lot and we back further off the neighborhood. Again, trying to make our own little island, come and go on Route 60, try not to disturb anybody. That's the safest way to approach construction. And it probably has the least amount of temp costs, where we're moving fences. When the school lets out in the summer, we take over the whole entry and reroute things. So the goal would be to sort of work on our own little island here, avoid the culvert, avoid RMA, avoid the neighborhood, avoid the high school.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Diane.
Brian, when you talk to the MSBA, I know they frown upon this. But would you just ask them again? I feel like they've been a little bit more flexible recently with the extreme increase in construction costs. Could you ask them about the option of doing a separate building on the other side of the culvert? I'm looking at this, right? I'm looking at this diagram.
You're talking about over here.
Yes.
Yep.
Because I'm looking at this diagram and it's extremely compact. There's nothing here that looks like a campus that gives the indoor-outdoor feel, that gives our kids what they deserve in a learning environment. This is all squished together. And for the sake of parking spaces and things like that, I think it would be a huge mistake for the city of Revere to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to have another high school that's not a high school, that's just a building thrown together in a neighborhood. So
I understand.
with that being said, and no offense, Dawn, when I say that, I know that.
No, I'm not
your
offended.
design is wonderful. I'm not picking on that. I'm just looking at another design that has a whole lot of humans on top of each other, which we're struggling with right now in the existing building.
Yeah, I hear it.
And if MSBA would think about having maybe the freshman academy as its own building on the other side of the culvert, and that gives a little bit more breathing room for the kids in grades 10 through 12.
Yeah.
Point taken. And I even think as Dawn goes through the other options, a few of the other, this is the most severe option from exactly the perspective you're talking about. I think it gets a little better. Does it get as good as we want it? I don't know. That's what we'd like your input on as we go through these.
Yeah. And this was our first attempt at saying, well, we had a design that everyone was on board with. What, can something that's similar be adjusted to
Yeah.
fit? And I think the answer is yes, but it's not ideal, right?
And it's not all that similar. There's a lot lost here.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. And for all of these, we did a diagrammatic first floor. We did the other plans, but said it was probably too much to share all that. So just they're all in your packet. So, feel free to, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them because it's 10 of 7. And I know folks often need to head out shortly around 7. So then we went to like a simple diagram where these are adjusted. Freshman Academy came to the south, the academic wing up against RMA, and then auditorium and gym are sort of, we're calling it a pinwheel, but basically they all feed off of this heart of the school. But you can see that the shadows become quite extreme on RMA. So, for all the reasons that you gave earlier, Diane, this is probably not ideal. It also eats up quite a bit of the triangular real estate that we have here. This is that triangle that Diane was referencing. Could the Freshman Academy go over there? Which I actually think is a great idea, Diane. So the third scheme is podium. We took a totally different concept here. We said, what if the first floor was all the heart of the school, first floor? The downside of this is it gets a story taller. You take the first floor and then you do the separation of community versus academic vertically, and then you start the academic wings at the second floor. So those are really second floor up along these two academic wings are the pure academies, and the community spaces feed off of this heart of the school, the auditorium to the south and the gym, because again, this is kind of the bigger piece of the site, staying away as best we can from the culvert. And you can see here that this jets out. This is the heart of the school, first floor. And I should also mention, I didn't earlier, and I apologize. All of these assume some level of underground parking and under building parking because it's not purely underground. So we'll end up berming the site up, similar to what we were doing at Wonderland. It's actually not as extreme as Wonderland. Wonderland was like 12 feet. I think we only need to be 8 feet or something here. So we're a little farther from, we're still in the flood zone, but a little farther away. So it's more like 8 feet here, but all of these assume some sort of under building parking. So this would be in addition to that. So it is quite a bit taller, just a different way of thinking about it. Trying to use the pieces of the building in different ways. So you can see there's quite a bit of site relief here. You have quite a bit to the west, quite a bit to the east, and then these are the academic wings above. You can see it in the diagram down here. Different way of thinking of it, does make a taller building.
Don, where you show that last, could you go back to that last slide where it says
Sure.
lockers in JROTC?
Oh, yeah.
Below the gym?
Yes. So, and thank you, Carl, for that. All of these similar to the one that we had at Wonderland. The gym's actually still at the second floor because again, we're tight for real estate and all of these spaces. If land wasn't an issue, they would all be next to the gym at the same level as the gym. We're still in the crunch of needing to put the lockers and junior ROTC below the gym in order to have the gym sort of as a freestanding. So that would connect at the second floor from the heart of the school. Same with the balcony level of the auditorium. That would always be the case, that the lower would be at the lowest level and the auditorium access would be off the second floor part of the school. And that's where it was always intended, the freshman CAF. With those, that vertical connection was always there between the lowest heart of the school level and the second heart of the school level.
So is there parking below the gym as well, or no?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
So it's, my concern is the actual amount of space that we're using for lockers and locker rooms. If we look at the way we operate now, and I know, that may change in the future, we even this school in its original design had an enormous amount of locker room space that in today's day does not get used. It doesn't get used in our sports teams. It doesn't get used in our gym time. So to me, that looks like an enormous amount of real estate that's not going to get used on a daily basis, and it's going to be in my vision, an bunch of empty lockers. You need to supervise the students in those areas. And the way our gym works now is any useful locker room is directly right off the gym, where our team, if they were here, a home team or a visiting team, would go in, get changed, and come out. To me, this looks like logistically it wouldn't work. in our environment and the way we run our phys ed programs and everything else
Yeah.
like that. I would like to see the gym on the ground level. We use our gym for multiple reasons, a lot of community gatherings. We have home basketball games, sporting events, and people come, in the amount of the 1800s to fill this place. I can't see 1800 people. Most of them are parents and spectators of the children going up flights of stairs to go see a sporting event. If it's possible, I'd like to explore, getting the gym to the ground level. I know we got restraints here, but I see a lot of space that's not going to be used when we look at those locker rooms. And if there's some way to kind of maybe bump them to the left or the right of the gym or move out, it just seems like we're going to wind up with an area that doesn't get used due to, the logistics of how we operate now.
Okay, we can further that discussion for sure.
Yeah.
This was literally the same version that was at the Wonderland, so we
Yeah.
pulled it over.
I didn't like that one either.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
same
I picked up on
problem.
that.
I will say that we did talk about, even in the Wonderland design, reducing the number of lockers, and making more small community space, but I agree with Carl's point. I think we have to really think about building safety, and if you're gonna have, even if it's locker rooms, like where the kids are getting changed for phys ed or for athletics or whatever, if that's not connected to the gym, then you have coaches who are trying to decide, am I supposed to be upstairs or am I supposed to be downstairs? Where am I going to be monitoring these kids that are going to be over some period of time in two different spaces as they get ready? So that's a challenge. I'd love to see a space below the gym that might be the robotics space, for the robotics team that we've been trying to fit together. So I know that it's way early for all of these to say that these things are decisions that are made and set in stone. I know that we're really starting this whole process over, so we're not quite there yet, but I think it's good for everybody on the committee, and I would encourage the other building committee members to do this too, to start verbalizing these ideas so that they can be built into the design as it gets refined.
Yes, absolutely.
immensely
Please
helpful.
share. Yeah. So thank you, Carl, for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
In this scheme, there would be room. I think in some of the others we're pinched for space, but I think maybe from scheme to scheme, it could vary if it needed to. So that's a great point, and we.
I just think, I know ROTC is, they're on one of our largest programs, and they need as much space as possible. So I
They
hate
have
to
space
see us-
upstairs in the gym as well, Carl. It's not
Right.
shown here. Yep, they have
So-
like a marching space, I think it's
Right.
called. Yeah.
So an
Yep.
idea I was thinking was to move some of those locker rooms and not have them so giant and make them into little smaller rooms, little team rooms, and then maybe move JROTC upstairs into that amount of square footage that those lockers are. Because we just can't have giant spaces like that for kids to go in and change and do all things like that. It just doesn't work. I know some buildings mention, the schools in New York and things like that, but this is not New York. And I bet you even the schools in New York don't have spaces like that. They're probably more confined and more controlled. So I think I'm sorry, but we have a locker room now that is just too big to control, never mind use it. It's just, you need, 6 people in those areas to just be, taking care of the security of the building, never mind making sure, that the kids are changing and doing what they're doing. So we really need to kind of build to our environment more so than, what just looks nice on paper. We need to get our ADs involved and our coaches involved into what a gym looks like in our environment and how it would work for basketball teams and soccer teams and tennis teams and things like that, so that we can use it. I mean, right now our most used locker rooms and things like that are the small little niches off the gym, and they're ideal because somebody can stand in the doorway and be in both places at once. And I think that's a goal that we should look at in design.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm happy to talk to the AD. And I'm also, there's a similar design that we did at Lowell High School with the lockers below, and they're using it. It's open and available. So encourage the athletic director to reach out to them, and we could get them a tour, and if there's interest in going down this road. So plenty of conversation to be had there, but I appreciate your comments, Carl, and we can certainly look at alternatives. Okay, the last scheme is what we're calling triangle scheme. It's kind of feeding off of the geometry of the site. And we broke one of our cardinal rules, but we did it intentionally. Typically, we like to have the academic wings, the core learning spaces face north or south. It's controlled light, northern lights, you know, great light. There's never glare on the student desks. The south light you can typically control with the facade. But what we did here in order to fit the site better, you can see up in this diagram, we took the 10 through 12 academic wing and we rotated it 90 degrees. It faces east-west, parallels the highway, Route 60, and allows the gym to move into the tighter part of the site, which I talked about, adjacency to fields. Freshmen at the south, auditorium near RMA, not too far off from a scale standpoint from that building, and allowed the heart of the school to run sort of east-west. And I think in all the others, it ran mostly north-south. So what that does is has this nice, you know, southern entryway and allows us to free up quite a bit of site and have some relief from this neighborhood to the south. So in the shadows, you can see even the tallest parts kind of on that drive, that bus drive over to RMA.
I just wanted to jump in because I previewed this earlier. I think this scheme has some promise, and we got some great comments here on other things we can push and pull, but from my opinion, this scheme probably most effectively mitigates shadows, and it does start. Remember that everything to the left of this is going to be fields and park. It keeps the building off the neighbors and wins space that could give this more of a campus feel. So I was excited to see this diagram. I also think you could think it's a little awkward to put the big academic wing on the road, but it's going to impact shadows the least. As Dawn said, this is going to be 8 feet in the air on the first floor. So even at the first floor, you're, you know, not quite above traffic and the road, but in the 5 stories above it, I think you're looking right over Amazon. I think the experience of this could check a lot of boxes. As you can see, it keeps pretty far away compared to some of the other schemes from existing parking. We can try to keep that all online, keeps us inside the culvert. So I just wanted to put in a word for this being, from a phasing and a cost point of view, a site utilization point of view, a back it off the neighborhood point of view, a give construction laydown space point of view. There's adequate space on the screen here for cranes, for construction laydown, that we don't have to spill into your existing parking lot. So I think this has promise, and maybe taking some of these items we talked about, maybe the freshman academy stays there, maybe it jumps the culvert. This one I feel like really could get some more massaging and become a legitimate scheme. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and as I'm looking at it, I'm wondering if this wing could get longer and not eat up some of that extra space you're talking about being able to use for other things during construction, and go down to 5 or 4 stories for, you know, just going back to the 6-story concern. You know, there may be some room in this particular scheme to elongate that, maybe even here. So I think there's some possibility here for a little bit of movement as the, you know, plans refine and we make adjustments based on feedback. So
and Carl, some of the things I remember, you know, you've pointed out over the time we've been doing this, having the gym, I know on grade is something that we'll look more at, but accessible to the fields, accessible to parking, easy to get to. I think it checks some of these boxes in a better way than other designs we've looked at on this cramped in site. So I think there's some promise here.
And for what it's worth, we would just, back to the glare in north-south, we would, this fenestration on this facade and the other side as it faces west, we would just work with some shading devices and facade work that would, you know, mitigate glare on student desks for learning. That just gives students headaches, and we don't want any of that. We want a building where students, you know, learn in comfort. So that would be the strategy as we talk about rotating this, but it does fit quite a bit nicer. And we intentionally did it knowing that it would do that. Susan, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Dawn.
Sure.
Have you looked yet at like the bus drop off and pickup for
That's-
these sites, and
That's
especially
kind
with
of
that
next
one?
step, Susan. Yeah, sorry. There's, it's one of those things where we wanted to have schemes, we wanted to have you preview them, and then we'll dive into the nitty gritty of them, make adjustments as we heard from tonight, and get the landscape architect and civil to take a look. So that's kind of next step.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
great.
way
Thank
up
you.
high right now,
Yeah.
looking down on this from 1,000 feet. But this site does have, this design does have so much space around it. Looking at the other ones, they don't have this kind of space. This will allow a lot more of that easily.
Doing bus
Great.
drops. Yeah.
Yeah, the bus drop and car drop will be a lot easier here
With this site.
with this
Great,
kind of
thank you.
design.
Yep.
I'll
Thank
just
you.
add, one other positive that I see on this site is the Rumney Marsh does not have their own auditorium. And they
Dan and I talked about
often
that.
come and have their events at the
I
high
mentioned
school.
that today.
So
Yep.
I like the proximity there.
Yeah, we just talked
Yeah,
about that
that's
today.
talked about that today. It's really nice that that auditorium is so close to them.
It's, of course, it's not my double-sided stage with an
I
amphitheater,
know,
but
that breaks my heart, but maybe there's a way to revive it. Let's not lose hope, Diane. Okay, so that, just so everyone knows, you've seen that, and then the floor plan, it's with quite a bit of space to the south. And then back to this was just the overview slide. So these are the 4 schemes. I don't know if anyone has thoughts on moving forward with 1, 2, 3, all 4 of them. Do you want to see something different? We're certainly willing to, reach out to the MSBA through Brian, and certainly, on the side, study what could go on the other side of the culvert in the form of a campus. Diane, to your point. So sounds like we've heard a few things tonight that would, one, either add schemes or make variations of these schemes.
I'd definitely be interested in hearing whether or not the MSBA would even entertain the idea of having a separate building, because the other thing that I'm thinking about is when we were going to be at Wonderland, the administrative offices, my offices, the business office, special ed office, we're all going to stay in the building that they're in right now, right? In the old high school.
Right.
When that comes down, we all need a new home too. So
Right.
now I know MSBA won't pay for any of that, but that's something that we have to think about as well, is that part of this project is going to have to include an administrative building.
Yeah, we had always had a little building tucked up here, Diane, if you remember.
Right,
for you
I
guys.
remember,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah.
It was one of the reasons we rejected this site.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the memories.
Mhm.
But I mean, if a building were to be allowed over there, and we did that in Easton, actually, our building,
Yep.
we ended up connecting the central admin in a way that it's kind of its own building. There is a doorway if they need it, but it has its own entrance and serves as its own, separate building. It's just
Yeah.
connected to that one. So maybe there's a way to incorporate that if there is a building on the other side of the culvert and we create more of a campus.
Yeah.
I
And maybe
love that idea.
and maybe it's even the freshman academy or the 10 through 12 academic wing, whichever one, is moved into its own building, and admin becomes a part of that building. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Just to really give a little bit more spread, so that it really will feel like a campus and not feel like just a concrete jungle.
Brian, can I just touch on the culvert for a second? It looks like now we're just leaving it as if it's fine. One of the advantages originally to putting the building on this site was that culvert was going to get an upgrade because of its condition, and it's probably end of life as far as I'm concerned. Is this something that you're looking at? I remember Donnie Charamello telling us that it was actually pitched the wrong way and it had to get up to, a level of 4 or 5 feet before it could actually get out. Is this something that we're looking to do a dual project on? Or is that culvert just going to stay untouched in the condition it's in during the construction?
We're certainly going to follow up on additional analysis. We sort of started that this week on the site meeting. with Chris and with Nick. They've got a little homework, we've got a little homework, but I think the benefit here is they wouldn't have to be constructed at the exact same time, which gives them flexibility. So the culvert is still something that I think is going to need to be studied end to end. And we've got an example of such a, one of Dan's consultants gave us an example of a hydrology study for a similar culvert system over in Somerville that we're going to look at. We're going to see what the costs of that study is. It still could turn out that study happens and there's offsite work that would need to happen and on-site. But the goal of these schemes is not really to just forget about it. It's to keep it that it could happen at a different time. On-site work for the culvert, we could do as part of this project. Off-site work, the MSBA will force to be a separate project altogether. So it could be a mix. If a study says this is the only part of the culvert system that needs fixing, it's something that we'd roll into this site work. If the hydrology study and that study says, well, you got just as much work to do to the east and west, there's got to be some separate project to do that, but maybe this project can still do the on-site upgrades. The key is that we be able to not have the two projects tied at the hip from a phasing point of view. And that's the real benefit of not having to reroute it. So what you're seeing is try not to reroute it. It doesn't mean don't fix it. And those problems you mentioned do exist. And we're going to look further into it. I think probably by the meeting at the end of the month, this might be a more detailed topic where we're talking about what would it take to do a study. I had heard that I had a colleague tell me that a real hydrology study for this type of thing would need to run through multiple seasons. The study itself might take a year and a half due to actual monitoring on-site, off-site, rain, where's it go? So keeping them able to happen at different times means the high school project might not need to wait for it, if you know what I mean. So we're certainly not looking to forget about it, but we are trying to preserve the not having to reroute it and allow them to happen at different times. And I know that's something Nick and Chris Jaramella are all over. They're doing some, they're looking into some stuff for us. We have our consultants looking into some stuff. That's going to be a big topic of the Wednesday site meetings.
Well, this is all very helpful. I have to jump off, so I don't know if there's anything else, or you have to do public comment, right?
Yeah, I think we're done with, I'll stop sharing, Linda.
Let me just look.
Yeah, if we go back to our agenda, we just want to go and see if there's any public comments. If so, state
And I see
name,
Jessica has a
address.
hand up.
Hi, do I have to say my name and address like the other meetings?
Please,
Yes,
yes, for the record.
Okay, Jessica Simpson, 24 Grand Ave. I'm just present. I was present at a few meetings before. I wanted to just be present as someone who lives close to the site. I'm wondering if anyone is interested in hearing from people close by that will be impacted by the whole project. And it's not in regards to combating the project, but more to have a firsthand account like in the neighborhood to address the potential environmental impacts to property. So it'll be important to keep the neighborhood in the know about the timeline and the parking changes and everything. But most of the time when it gets to the point of city meetings and people become aware of it around here, the resident concerns are spoken pretty like too late. So my main concern really as living over here, more on the demo side, where my house is, but the land here at the current site is still vulnerable to flood and extremely close to resident property, as we all know, unlike Wonderland was. So my main long-term concern for myself will really be any potential flooding and storm drainage impacts, which is a current daily concern for us. And it's only getting worse with every storm. So I previously mentioned it in a meeting, and I know it's still really early, but I'm probably going to be present and I just want to keep at it as plans are drawn up because I don't want it to be too late. And I know like the building will be built in great condition and safe for flooding and climate change and everything, but there is a low-lying part of the neighborhood below the hill and next to it on the other side too. And I just want to protect the integrity of that. But that's pretty much it.
I was just I don't want to start asking for contact information here, but Linda, you got her name and address, right? Because I would like to speak with some folks, maybe perhaps through the ward counselor, perhaps with Carl or some other people, just sort of in the loop, but I would love to establish that communication, because if we get to the point where we're really building here, there are a handful of people who I want to have my cell phone number, superintendent's cell phone number, safety officer's cell phone number, and I want to be checking in with you folks all the time. So from a design perspective, your input's essential, but if we get to the point what we're really building there, day-to-day contact is what we expect. So I wouldn't mind making real contact with you. So if you have some neighbors with questions, et cetera, I can make sure that the ward council or other folks from the school are involved, but we can try to address them live.
All right, thank you. Thanks.
And
Stacy, I
the
see your
chat.
note there. I'll follow up with you.
See the chat too, Brian. Stacy says she has 25 people ready to talk. So
yep,
there's maybe it's a collective group that you and Jessica can collaborate on.
Yeah,
Jessica, don't be surprised if I drop a
Jessica's
business
contact
card in
as
your
well.
mailbox.
Thank you. And I've talked to Susan before too. So she knows, she has my number.
Okay.
Next I see Ralph has his hand up.
Hi, Ralph DeChico, 49 Washington Street, Revere. Just a couple of quick comments. I see that these are just preliminary design concepts, but I really cannot see a high school going any more than three floors for a lot of reasons. Number one, for the flow of the school for children, protruding going up and down for education. Also for some people, for some students that have hidden disabilities that need to go up and down the school, it takes them a lot more time. So I'm putting on my ADA Commission on Disabilities hat. Because these schools are not going to have multiple elevators. Also, you know, some of these students, you know, it's not every day that they have problems with their walking, but they do, and throughout the day it gets harder for them to walk. So 3 floors is a lot. Also, in the best scenario, a high school should be schools would be great if they were 2 stories, but we know you can't do anything 2 stories because you need a lot of land to do something like that. But 3 stories it would be acceptable. But when you go anything higher than that, you're running into a lot of issues, or you know, students, teachers, anything else like that. That it makes it a lot harder for them to be able to go from class to class, or coming in the morning, going down, or you know, even if they have to go to the gym, if they're coming from a 5th floor, there's not a lot of time in between the classes to be able to get to their next class, so that the school day is not that long already, so they don't have a lot of time period in that. So that's something that really has to be brought out. My second point is, Dr. Kelly, you're going to be amazed that I agree with you on something. I really, and I'm just on here as a parent and a citizen. I've been on these meetings since the beginning. I'm not a counselor, so I am really getting sick of hearing the point that they need to have special meetings and get updated monthly. As you can see, none of them are on the Zoom meeting again, and they've been saying for 3 to 4 months that we need to be on it. Whether they're watching it on Revere TV, I don't know, but they should be at these meetings. They are our city councilors. They're the ones that vote on this. Be here at these meetings. I don't want to hear the excuse that you don't have time, but you have time to vote something down or vote something up. So be a part of these meetings. Don't say that they're not transparent, because they are. I find the time to be at these meetings as a parent. So as a city councilor, you should be at these meetings and not need some special meeting to know and get updated what's happening and what's going on, so that the 11th hour, so you can grandstand. You should be at these meetings and not need special notification of what's going on monthly.
May I say something, please?
Not open for debate. This is just public comment.
No, I know. I'm just gonna say, I'm not gonna debate you. I'm just gonna say that all the city councils that work for Revere, it's a part-time job. And a lot of people have full-time jobs and they don't get out until 6. That's why we moved the meetings up.
I'm
to
going to play my violin for you right now.
Okay, thank you. You said you didn't wanna. So
Quickly on the
Thank
first
you.
point, either Dan or Don, if I'm not mistaken, that when we get up to this height of a building, we'd be tripping the high-rise code, correct? Which is going to bring with it
Yes.
That's correct.
elevators, typically more elevators than you'd see in
We
a
do
in a
that
low-rise
anyway.
school. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, this building would have more elevators than the commonly would have.
And the point's taken, Ralph. I know where you're coming from, and I think the truth of this site is a 2-3 story building just plain and
Some won't
simple wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
You know, so the 4 is pushing it. We were looking at 6 today. I do think that the scheme that I think has the most traction, Dawn, you made a good point that we might be able to stretch that front bar of the building out and get it down to 5. But I think there's a lot of follow up there with the school folks and trying to talk to some people in some other buildings and talking with Carl, talking with Diane, Chris, teachers. You know, we're not making that decision tonight, but we're trying to do it to fit it on the site, to leave enough site to give as much of that campus vibe as we can, and potentially to not have to take over Ambrose Park or do a culvert simultaneous. The culvert could happen before, after, during, et cetera. So just letting you know the reasons we're trying to look at higher, but the challenges are noted and definitely things that we need to talk about more.
And just to jump off that, Brian, right? I mean, not to go backwards or be the master of the obvious, but this site is going to come with a lot of compromises. As you can see by these layouts early, it's going to be a difficult site to maneuver. We're going to do the best we can and hopefully get one that has an educational program and a layout that eventually the school and the city will love.
Anyone else?
Okay, I don't see any other hands up. So I'm gonna make, oh, sorry, John
Yes, John?
Martelli.
Yep.
First and foremost, thank you for all your hard work on this. My daughters will be one a nurse and one a crime scene investigator by the time this school gets built, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I love the city and I love where we're going. And I think this is a really hard job. And my real job, I run a public relations and marketing agency. So I'm here to offer if there is a need to work on communications to make sure the community knows that the changes are happening. I'm happy to lend my hand on that as a writer and, you know, using multiple tools to communicate with audiences. I know this is really important with development. 2, I'm really happy with the some of the design schemes that really taken the concerns of the immediate communities and green space and shadowing. That's the stuff that most people don't pay attention to when it comes to development. Let's build, 13 floors and it'll be fine. Well, you're killing trees, you're killing sunlight, and people's pools get shaded. It's a million things that go on. So the detail and the attention to this has been impressive. So thank you very much for the effort. And, I don't care if my taxes go up. I think this is a good thing the city needs, and keep doing the good work. And again, if I can help in any way, shape, or form on the communication side, I'm happy to lend a hand.
We could fit another Dawn on the project. We've already got Dawn confusion, so.
Every time I pick up my Starbucks, it says D-O-N, D-A-W-N. I'm like, yeah, I'm D-O-N, but it's fine. I'll
We
take the
all
latte
answer to
anyways.
all of it.
That's right. I'll take the latte anyways.
So, and John, thank you for that. You've been a huge support of the school department. So we really appreciate you offering, again, as you have to us in the past, the support on that. Would you just give your address for the record?
39 Dale Street, Revere.
Thank you. I was just gonna ask.
39 Dale. I'm a highly caffeinated fast talker, so I apologize. 39 Dale Street, the home of the lemon.
Thank you very much. I believe that is it. I don't see any other hands. So
Okay.
if there is no other business or other discussion, we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And I think, did we decide there's no roll call on this?
We
That's
did
it, right?
decide there's no roll call on
Okay.
this. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Recording stopped.